Hello and welcome to the show. Now, Group B rally cars hold a special place among the legendary motorsport vehicles. Certainly many people, probably me included, would argue that the Group B cars were kind of the pinnacle of rallying. Certainly it was when rallying was at its most popular. There were fans that were just as crazy as the cars, and let's face it, that's saying quite a lot because these cars are, well, utterly ridiculous. This Peugeot here has, according to Dirt Rally, 480 horsepower. The truth is, it really depended on how they fancy running the turbos. I seem to remember reading somewhere on the internet the Lancia Delta S4 could get up to 1,000 horsepower if they put the turbos on max, and it was a similar story with the likes of the Peugeots and the Audis and so on. They are ridiculous cars. 0 to 60 times, well, they could get to 60 in under 3 seconds on gravel. Supercars struggle to do that on tarmac. These things are absolutely ridiculously fast. However, the speed and the difficulty to control them kind of led to the category's downfall. There were just too many accidents, and both fatalities of drivers and spectators led to the category being cancelled. The cars were just too fast and too hard to control for the sort of stages that they were run on. And it's got me thinking, how would Group B cars compare to the more modern vehicles? So I set about doing a little test. I was going to take 3 categories: the Group B cars, the Group A cars that followed the Group B vehicles, and the modern cars, the 2010 vehicles that we have on Dirt Rally. I selected a stage. I've gone for the Bidno Moorland stage in Wales, a route that I quite like and a route that I spent a little bit of time practicing, familiarising myself with. It's a good stage. There's quite a bit of fast sections for the cars to stretch their legs, but there are plenty of tight and twisty corners and a few hairpins. There's some jumps and some water splashes. Basically everything that you could ask a rally car to really contend with. We start off in a sort of a very narrow enclosed forest area. It opens up for the later stages. I really do quite like this stage. I don't like this corner. The amount of times I have missed that corner and gone soaring off into the distance. Yeah, I had a few issues on getting that corner right, first of all. The Subaru, things were going pretty well. The onboard footage is all from my first attempt with the various vehicles. Things went well until I took a jump slightly wrong and the Subaru went for a little bit of a roll. Well, it's not a proper FailRace video unless something falls over. So I got the roll out of the way quite early on. Yeah, I thought I could take the speed, and if I'd been slightly better positioned on the jump, I probably could have got away with it. But yeah, one tiny error on this game and you end up in an awful lot of trouble. Now, this Impreza, let's face it, I'm not expecting this to win. Out of the category of cars that we're bringing, this is likely to be the slowest of the vehicles, but I thought I would bring it for comparison's sake, shall we say. Power-wise, 301 horsepower. It's 100 horsepower down, up to 180 horsepower down on the Group B cars, depending on which particular one that you choose. But we're losing 100 horsepower to them, and weight-wise, well, it's 2,645 pounds, which I believe is the minimum weight that these rally cars could be. It's heavier by a fair bit than the Group B cars, and it's down on power. Acceleration, no. There is nowhere near as much. This is not a slow car at all, don't get me wrong, but there is nowhere near the acceleration that you get from the Group B monsters, and that's what you would expect. There's nowhere near the straight line speed that we get either. But that's not surprising, and let's face it, rallying isn't about a drag race. It's not about getting from A to B in a straight line very, very quickly. It's all about lots and lots of twisting corners and trying to get down a stage. And of course, this car is very easy to drive in rally car terms anyway. There is a decent amount of grip. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed driving the Subaru. It was a very easy car to kind of get in and drive, except for my small roll. Small rollover issue up there, and again, I would carry a little bit too much speed as we come up towards this sort of this final sector, coming up towards the water jump. Wasn't quite sure where to brake and got it wrong across a bump, and then we're up on the sides again. Didn't quite roll over. I could do with the guy sort of holding the steering wheel, you know, don't just stay there, and then I may have found neutral. It wasn't a perfect first run, certainly, from the Impreza. But I did get a good sense for the car. It was a nice vehicle to drive. You carry good speed, lots and lots of grip through the turns. The brakes weren't fantastic on it. You had to brake a little bit earlier than I was perhaps expecting on a couple of occasions. But actually through the turns, the car had some very good grip and really wasn't particularly hard to drive. And as we come up and cross the line on our first run, the Subaru sets an opening time of 3:30.8, but admittedly there was a slight falling over moment in all of that. Up next from the 2010 cars, it is the Ford Fiesta. Now this, I was surprised to find, this is actually less powerful than the Subaru. This has 299 horsepower to the Subaru's 301, so we're 2 horsepower down and it's exactly the same weight. That's not quite what I expected from this car. And the first couple of corners, I just tried to carry a bit too much speed and clonked the back of the car on a pile of logs. Got away with it without any major issues though, so yeah, it's all good, it's fine. Now of course, I am expecting this car to go faster than the Subaru, while maybe the power and weight are the same. I don't think that gives you a torque figure. I don't know what the torque figure is. I assume it is greater in the Fiesta. Certainly the Fiesta, it feels faster accelerating, not massively, it's noticeably quicker, but it's not a huge amount as you would expect with such similar statistics. What makes the real difference with this car is the way that it handles. Like these corners up here, you can just carry so much more speed through them. There is so much more grip. Admittedly, I've overcooked it a little bit. Again, the first run with the Fiesta here, just pushing the car a little bit too hard. But there is so much more grip in this vehicle. Like, you're flat out up here. You're flat out in the Subaru, but it feels a lot more iffy. In the Ford, it feels easy to be going flat out up there. Again, I was running a tiny little bit too wide through that turn there. But again, it's flat out through that turn. There's you can't, again, you just ish do that with the Subaru. But the Ford, everything feels so much more comfortable in this car. And again, we're not surprised by that. It has, I would imagine, better tyres, we have better suspension, and the brakes. The brakes are perhaps the biggest difference of all with this car. It stops so much nicer than everything else. We're coming up towards the big jumps now. Over the first one, of course, we're still flat out all the way down here. The next jump that we do, in the Subaru, you land and you're on the brakes. In this, you wait, you go over the next bump, then you jump on the brakes, and then you take the corner, and it's fine. If you do that in the Subaru, you're off into the scenery. You're never ever going to make the corner. But the brakes in the Fiesta are so good that you can stop that much later. It's phenomenal how when you compare this to everything else, how good the brakes are in this car. It is absolutely ridiculous. As far as sort of like acceleration wise goes, I think there are a number of factors perhaps working why this car feels a little bit quicker. Potentially more torque, of course, but I would imagine we've got better tyres, perhaps giving it better traction. We've got better suspension. Again, when we're dealing with dirt and bumps and so on, better suspension. We should be perhaps get better traction, so we get the 300 horsepower down a little bit better. Again, I was having problems with that water splash. There's a little lip on the exit of the water splash that I hit quite heavily. If you're going too fast, you hit that lip and it kind of chucks the car in a direction somewhere and it causes issues. I also think perhaps the gearbox and the gearing is better in the Fiesta. Again, it's all about making the most of the power that you have available. As we come through, the water splash isn't aiming for that gate are very treacherous. It's certainly in practice with other cars, the amount of times I've gone through the water splash expecting I was going to be alright the other side and just plough into the gate. Yeah, quite a few. Anyway, on the opening run, the Fiesta set a time some 10 seconds quicker than the Subaru. But that's perhaps the kind of results that we would expect. Certainly with the brakes on that Ford, I'm not at all surprised. Now for the Group B monsters, I have opted to use the Lancia Delta S4. I do very, very much like this car, and as far as statistics go, it's very much got the other two beat. 400 horsepower, so there's 100 more horsepower in this car, and it's only 1,962 pounds. So we have 100 more horsepower and 700 pounds less weight. And as you can see already, it is so much faster on the acceleration. Just out of the turns, this car feels, it's ridiculously quick on the acceleration front. I can't give you any figures because, well, like all Group B cars, it doesn't seem to have a speedo. There are dials for everything. There is boost pressure, rev counters, oil pressure, oil temperature, or water temperature. There's all of the gauges. There's even a battery voltage gauge in the co-driver's seat. But is there a speedo anywhere? No. no, we don't need a speedo in the Group B cars, but it's just so noticeable how much quicker. Like, the Fiesta feels a little faster than the Subaru. This is in a completely and utterly different league. But of course, we knew that the Group B car was going to be when it comes to acceleration. The important thing is, how does it deal with the corners? The answer is, it's quite scary. When it comes to the turn, I really shouldn't have driven this car after driving the Fiesta for these first runs, because there is not the brakes or the grip at all. I was taking that. The corner before that hairpin is flat out in the Fiesta. You do it flat out in the Lancia and you will have a very, very big crash. But even then, I'm slower through that corner. I'm having to brake earlier for the hairpin. Again, down here, you can brake very, very late with the Fiesta. I get a similar problem, actually, with the Lancia there, as I did with the Fiesta on these opening runs. But you're braking so much earlier with this car than you do with the Ford. But it is perhaps a little bit more similar, sort of braking-wise, certainly, to the Subaru. You jump on the brakes the second you've landed the jump, and we just about get it stopped. And while braking wise it is perhaps similar to the Subaru. The Subaru has better brakes, I have no doubt, but the Lancia is so much lighter. Stopping distance is perhaps quite similar. It still doesn't have the corner grip. I still can't take as much speed through the turns with this car as I can with the Scooby. So it is all about getting the most out of the straight line bits. Getting the absolute most. The second we're not worrying about turning, just got to try and make the most of all the acceleration and the straight line speed. One problem I was having with the Delta, and none of the other cars, is that I often found that I could get the wheels kind of, sort of like the back of the car, slightly caught it on the ruts on the outside. Much better through the water splash this time around. I could kind of get the back, a little bit stuck out in the ruts, and that kind of pulled the car out wide, if you like. And yeah, had a little problem with that. The other sort of big noticeable difference between the Delta and, let's say, the Ford, is that when it came to the really tight hairpins, trying to get the car out the other side, you could use the handbrake and get the Ford turned really nicely. The Lancia, when I went to put the power down, it kind of just wanted to drag itself understeer wide. I wasn't expecting that from the Lancia, I have to say. But as we come up towards the finish line on the first run, the Delta does set a quicker time, a 3:17.5. But because I didn't want it just to be a sort of a one-off stage time, and because, well, certainly the Subaru had a bit of a dodgy one, I went off and did the remainder of the runs, each car having 4 more runs after that. I may have got a little brave with the Impreza on the brakes, trying to get it stopped through the water splash. Left it too late, absolutely clobbered a sign, and then we managed to beach the car once I tried to get it going again. Yeah, we've slightly broken the rear bumper, and you see at the hairpin there how much nicer the Subaru gets turned than the problems we were having with the Lancia. Yeah, there's the bumper is hanging off ever so slightly at the back of the Subaru. The Fiesta didn't have a completely easy time of it. The thing with this car is that because it is so good under brakes and so good handling, you have to really be brave through the turns, try and take as much speed as you can. I got the entry wrong into this corner. We ended up pointing up at the sky. I kind of got it sliding at the wrong point and ended up on the inside, on the bumps, and the car got a little bit unhappy with me, and then we pointed it at the sky. And the Delta, well, the main issue with this was just try and keep it off the ruts. The second you put it on the ruts, there is so much power and speed you get yourself in trouble. So running wide out of a hairpin, we're across the bumps, and when I do get it back on the road, I'm trying to floor it, and I just wiggle it slightly, and then we fall off. I perhaps shouldn't have floored it quite so eagerly once we'd got it out of trouble. I fight my way across the field. I do get the Lancia back on the course. Certainly the Delta was the hardest of the 3 cars to drive. There is absolutely no doubt about that. The remainder of the runs were okay. The cars didn't visit the scenery too many times. And on to the times, we have perhaps a bit of a surprise victor. The Group B Lancia Delta goes fastest with a 3:11.0, almost 4 seconds faster than the Ford Fiesta. The Impreza, I'm not particularly surprised to see that at the bottom. A good car to drive, don't get me wrong, a nice easy car to drive, but it doesn't have the brakes or the grip or the acceleration of the Fiesta, and it's, of course, nowhere near the speed of the Delta. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see the Impreza down the bottom. Wasn't too far off though, but the Delta at the front, taking victory. I mean, I like having the Group B cars at the top, but I didn't quite expect it to overcome the Fiesta. It's just got everything is much more modern on the 4. We've got better brakes, we've got better suspension, better tyres, better gearbox and so on. But it just cannot overcome, even with all of the corner speed that you can take with it, it just cannot overcome the sheer brute force of the Lancia Delta. However, one interesting thing that I did notice when doing this, my times for the stage, when we compare them to the AIs, I have it on professional difficulty, as I have with all the stuff, the AIs are bloody fast on this game, but with the Group B cars, I was 10 seconds quicker than the nearest competitor. But when it comes to the modern rally cars, I was only 2 seconds faster than the nearest AI. Now, admittedly, maybe there is some slightly different AI scaling depending on what car you're driving, the difficulty of the car you're driving, and so on. But what that kind of suggests to me is perhaps I couldn't quite get the most out of the Fiesta, because the Fiesta is all about carrying corner speed. The straight line speed isn't there. It's all about making the most of the car through the corners. The Group B Lancia is survive a corner and then point into the straight and go very, very quickly until the next corner, and then try and survive that corner. And then we go very quickly again when we get to a straight line. You are much more likely to have an accident with the Lancia, certainly. It's a much harder car to drive than the Fiesta, but it's all about making the most of when you get towards a straight bit. Whereas the Fiesta is you've got to be absolutely on it through the corners because you can't make up any time when it comes to a straight. I mean, I have no doubt that all of these cars will go faster with a better driver than I. I'm certainly not the best when it comes to a dirt rally. But if that is the case, then we're also saying it is easier to get speed out of a Delta S4, and I'm not entirely sure that's that's correct either. Either way, the Lancia it goes quickest, and I'm pleased to see that the Group B cars is certainly holding its own against the more modern rally vehicle. Again, I had so many problems getting the Lancia to go round that hairpin. It really didn't like it. Yeah, Group B cars can certainly still hold their own. They are absolutely terrific fun and an incredible challenge to drive quickly. But when you get it right, it is certainly very, very rewarding. Anyway, that is it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.